Hey guys, my name is Tyler Vanderhoeven, and today I'm going to give you a demo of the Statamic add-on I've built for responsive images. If we take a look in the browser here, fire up the developer tools, and then we dig in here, we can see that these images are loading up at a width of 2,880 pixels. Now, that's about as big as you're going to get. This is a Retina MacBook Pro that I'm on. It's the pixel resolution is actually 1440, but because it's a Retina screen, that density is doubled, and so you get this number 2880, and that's what it's measuring. If I were to close this browser session and then restart it, it would actually fire up that again, and then if it was like half width, it would measure differently. Let me go ahead and do that for you. So if we start it up at this width, and then fire up the developer tools, and we take a look inside here, we can see now they're only loading up at 800. And that's all set on breakpoints that have been built into Elixir based on some really common breakpoints to determine when those images would be created. Otherwise, every single pixel in this value here, as the browser started to increase or decrease in size, would create an infinite array of folders, or images rather, which wouldn't be good. So there are breakpoints. And then if we increase the size of this, you can start to see it's a little bit grainy, and refresh it. Everything clears up. The images have been rediscovered at their appropriate value based on the browser width. Pretty spiffy. Let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. What you can see in here is I've got a list of images that are getting pulled in by the get file tag, as well as this kind of hero image up at the top. And the only tag you've really got is this width tag right here. And then the data tag. Those are the only two required tags. So, I mean, it works. Like this piece right here, there's nothing more that you need. It's just the data tag above and before any Elixir tag that's being pulled into being set for the width value of the transform tag that Statamic has. And so you can use that transform here, you can use it inside a GIF file, so that this one's actually looking inside my full-size folder. So inside my assets folder over here, I've got a full-size folder that's got all my full-size images, imagine that. And then the destination is actually putting it into a folder that I've just arbitrarily called Elixified, because that makes sense. And then I've got a quality set to 60, and all the other tags that you can use for the transform are here. It's just that your width value, instead of setting that hard, you put it in through an Elixir tag, which is going to measure through the add-on what that width should be. Let's go ahead and go through some of the other features. There's two modes. So the first mode, like I mentioned, is measuring the browser width. So as the browser width increases, the image size is going to increase if it goes past one of those breakpoints. And then if you go back down, it's already loaded a full-size image, or a maximum image, so it's not going to recalculate anything because it's not going to reload that resource. That's already been loaded. So it holds on to that. But if it does increase, and it's going to be loading a bigger image, it's going to go ahead and do that for you. But some of the tags we've got available to us inside of Elixir, if you don't want my breakpoints, and all of this stuff is laid out in the document, so you can check those out for the details. But if you set a breakpoints array of, let's say, 320, I don't know, 640, 800, 1200, and 1800, something like that, then that's going to take precedent over the ones I have in there kind of as a default. Now I'll have to close that to stop that cookie so that we can actually start pulling in that new data. And you'll see that nothing's really changed. It's just pulling in those values. And so if we went up to our full width, it wouldn't show quite the full resolution image because it's only going up to 1800 instead of 2880. So that breakpoint, if we look in our code here, the images aren't going to be bigger than that preset value. Another value that we've got available to us in this data tag is the fallback tag, and this is set to 320 by default, which is pretty small, but I wanted to set it there because if something goes wrong, that's the image I wanted to be loading. You can set this value to whatever the heck you want. If for some reason a user doesn't allow cookies, has cookies blocked, or JavaScript off, something like that, something goes wrong, that fallback is what it's going to jump back to when it makes this image. So that'll just get dumped in here as 800 if something goes wrong. So that's pretty important to consider if you think that that's probably something that could happen, to set that up a little bit to something that would make sense. I don't want to set it really high, but I don't want to set it really low, but I didn't know what to set it to, so I just set 320 to default. You guys can set that to whatever you want. I must mention here, though, that these are being set with a Statamic data blink tag in the PHP add-on, and so this data tag has to be in a template. If you're thinking about putting this in the head tag or another layout piece, that will not work unless this is in a layout, of course. But if you've got your images and stuff in a template here, this Elixir data tag has got to be inside one of these template tags as well. And that's because Statamic parses template data, puts that template data in the layout template, or whatever you want to call it, and then it parses the whole thing together. And so if this piece is inside of the head tag, for example, which gets parsed into the layout, this will get parsed first and then this. And so all of these values that you set won't be respected because this tag is going to get called before this tag will, if this tag doesn't exist in the template, like if I had it in the head. But that's pretty easy, just, hey, whenever I'm using Elixir tags, let's make sure we set the Elixir data tag up at the top. It's simple, but very, very important. So don't mix that up. And if you're running into issues, make sure you've got that requirement met. So that's those. But now let's talk a little bit about the second mode, which is the mind blow mode, the one that actually measures images. Because I don't know about you, and I'm going to take this away because I want to see my full images. I don't know about you, but I don't often see websites with images that are 100% of the browser width. It looks pretty cool, but it's a little bit impractical for most of our use cases. Most of the time, I don't know, they take up 70%, or they're part of a blog page that's only, set at 900 pixels, or, I mean, there's just no way to really know how wide an image is going to be until it's been loaded. And so that's what I grabbed a hold of in this second mode. And the only requirement for this second mode here is to add in, let's see if I can even spell my own name, Elixir, and I actually put it in the wrong spot, so you got to watch this. You guys got to watch me. You got to put it in front of the source here. So it's prefixing this image source, which what happens when we do this is when it loads the page, it will actually not load, it'll look and find the source, but it won't actually load the image yet until it makes sure it's got the right width. So just for the sake of example, I'm going to go into this piece and unblock this little special piece of code. And now, making sure everything is set, we can refresh this again. And now it's pulling in a whole nother set of interesting data. So at the top here, it's still loading in my full-size image, because it should, because that's the full width of the browser. But then inside here, everything is marking based on how wide the image is. And these are kind of large because this is a Retina screen, remember. So 360 would become 720. The next size up from that is 800. And the same goes for the rest of these images. But they're not calculating based on browser width, they're calculating based on their own width. And that is awesome. If we close this and then fire it back up again at a smaller width, This will have to create the images. That's why it takes a little bit sometimes. Which is worth mentioning right before I forget that as you're building this, it's creating that directory of images just like the transform tag does. It makes those images. So make sure as you're designing this at different breakpoints that you test it at those different breakpoints so those images are created on your time rather than on a user's time, especially if you've got like 100 images or something like that. You don't want that to go on a client's or a end user's time. You want that to go on your time as you kind of wait for those images to load and get put into those directories, and then you're golden and you're good to go. Anyway, so now it's loaded at 800 for our hero image, and then all the rest of these are calculating themselves based on their width. If we were to increase this size up to here, everything starts to get grainy, but we refresh. And the world is golden again. Just absolutely beautiful. We go up to our full width, refresh. Everything is golden once again. And if we go down, you'll notice nothing really changes because we've already loaded the full-size images, so we don't need to go through a whole nother refresh process to load smaller images if we've already loaded bigger images, which is also why I have to keep closing this browser to show you things. Okay, well there's one more tag because we'll look down in here in our assets directory. We've got everything that we've built going into this Elixified folder, which is going to get huge and cumbersome and annoying, and I didn't like that. And so we're going to move that to the trash. And what we're going to do now is add in the final magic tag. I'll also notice that I'm using these single brackets because we are inside the transform tag, so we got to use our single brackets. Elixir location. Go ahead and copy this and paste it. And so now what's going to happen is it's going to create smartly a folder directory of images inside the assets image location, destination rather. So if we are to refresh this, it's going to take a minute, build all of our images because we just deleted them all, and then we'll look out here. Oh my goodness! Look at that! It's all sorted. How unbelievably beautiful. That's just makes my heart so happy. And it was very easy to do. And now you might be saying, well, why can't we just use the Elixir tag twice? Well, because of this mode that we're in, where it's measuring this piece, it actually puts the image width into an array, and then every time it sees this tag, it puts in the next value for that array. And so if we were to use that twice, it wouldn't count the right amount. It would actually put it in twice. So there are some limitations there, which is why we had to build 2 tags for that. But it makes sense and isn't too heavyweight, so I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah. Oh, one thing I should mention is that you cannot mix modes. Like you have to use the width mode or you have to use the image mode. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't have this mode running off of browser width and this one running off of the image width. And that's again because this Elixir tag, anytime that's called, it's going to be putting that array that it's creating in. So it's going to see this one and it's going to put the first width that it measured when it was measuring this into that array. There may be some ways to fix that. I'll have to look at it. But for now, just make sure that anytime you've got an Elixir source attribute that you're using that everywhere. If you're not using it, don't use it anywhere. Don't mix and match. You can, of course, if you just wanted to use transform in the normal way without using the Elixir tag, heck, go ahead and do that. But anytime you're going to use this tag, make sure it's synchrononymous. Oh yes, synchrononymous everywhere, so that everything's the same. But that is Elixir. Super excited about it. Super pumped to plug it into my own projects. Let me know what you think. Be super like, yay, if you decide to buy it, and give me some feedback on maybe how to make it better. This is something I hope to improve. That's why it's paid, so that I can afford to improve it. As you've got ideas, especially if you're an add-on developer yourself and you look at the code, let me know. I'll actually send you the non-minified version of the JavaScript, and you can poke around, see if you can find a better way to do what I've done. Let's actually solve this problem. Make Statamic the best platform for handling responsive images. Let's make that a thing. Let's really tackle this problem, do it responsibly, and tackle the beast of responsive image, because it matters. It really does. Because the range of images that we need to load is just staggering. But let's not shy away from that problem, because these problems can be solved with things like this and groups of people like you. Thanks a lot for spending a few minutes with me.